Alrighty, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and get started because it is 3:02. So I see we've got, I want to say, 2 people in the audience. Hello and thank you for coming. We are still missing one of our panelists, but he may join us a little bit later. So hello and welcome. My name is Jo Klein. I use they, them, or he, him pronouns, and I am the GIS or Geographic Information Systems and Data Visualization Librarian at UNCG University Libraries. Some logistics for this panel, which are being hidden by my Zoom window right now. So attendees are going to be muted on entry. Please remain muted during the presentation portion and when you're not speaking to avoid background noise. Our panelists are going to introduce themselves, then give brief presentations about their work with GIS or Geographic Information Systems, Geographic Information Science. After presentations are done, we'll move into the discussion and Q&A portion of the panel where you are welcome to ask questions of our panelists. And I'll go over how to ask questions again later when we get to the Q&A, but for now, if you would like to ask a question, you can use the hand raise reaction and I will call on you to unmute and ask your question. You can also put questions into the chat, but if you could please hold those until the Q&A so that they don't get lost. You're welcome to ask questions to me directly in the chat if you would like. So where it says to everyone in the chat, you can click on it and select only me, or in the participants list, you can also click on more by my name and it'll give you the option to chat with me directly. So if you want your question to be anonymous or only for anonymous to our panelists or other attendees, you can chat it to me directly. All right, so a quick spiel, and I guess one more thing too, if at any point you can't hear anybody or if there's weird audio feedback, feel free to put that in the chat and I'll troubleshoot it. So a quick spiel about GIS Day at UNCG, which is why we are here. So GIS Day is an annual event started by Esri, which is the company behind ArcGIS software, one of the leading GIS programs. So the event was started in 1999 to recognize GIS software and to unite the geospatial community in a global movement of collaboration, sharing, and education. At UNCG, GIS Day is an opportunity to share the work that we do with GIS and to encourage others to explore how they can use it in their own work. So we had a research and applications webinar on getting started with GIS earlier today at noon, and you can view the recording at this URL, which I'm going to drop in the chat for folks who would like to go back and look at it. There's also a geocaching challenge going on. So I have hidden 3 containers called geocaches around campus. The goal of the challenge is to find all 3 geocaches using their coordinates. And I've hidden stickers, keychains, and other fun stuff within those containers. So players will have until the 21st at 1 p.m. to complete the challenge. After that, the geocaches will be live on geocaching.com for the broader community to play. And you can join that community or the challenge at any time until the 21st. And then finally, check out the Library GIS Resource Guide, which has links to tutorials, tools, and other learning resources, as well as my contact information if you would like to email me, or if you want to schedule a consultation to talk about how you can use GIS in your own projects. And I'm going to copy that link and put it in the chat as well. Hey, Ryan. All righty, so a quick note. I'm going to be using a broader definition of GIS. So you'll notice I said Geographic Information Systems, Geographic Information Science. I like to use the all-encompassing definition, which includes both geographic information science, which is digital geospatial work in general, so the concepts of geospatial work, and the more literal or technical geographic information systems, including tools that we use to do GIS work called ArcGIS, QGIS, and more. Our panelists were invited to interpret the term GIS however they choose, and I look forward to learning what it means to them during this panel. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, let us introduce our panelists. So if y'all would go around, tell us your names, your pronouns if you'd like, your role or title, and the department or unit that you're joining us from. And we'll just go in alphabetical order by family name. So Evan, if you're willing to start us off.
Hi, I'm Evan Goldstein. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a research scientist in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Sustainability, and also the Office of Research and Engagement.
Hi everyone, I'm Will Lee. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Geography, Environment, and Sustainability. I'm teaching GIS classes here and also doing research in GIS. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Sarah Praskievicz. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Geography, Environment, and Sustainability. Hello, my name is Rajesh Sigdel. I go by Raj. I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Geography, Environment, and Sustainability.
Hi, I'm Michael Swaim. I'm a GIS unit leader with facilities design and construction here on the UNCG Greensboro campus.
I'm Brian Robinson, postdoc, clear fellow in University Libraries.
Thank you. All righty. I'm so happy to have this panel happening. All righty, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and going to turn it over to Evan. I guess we'll continue going in alphabetical order.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm a coastal geomorphologist by training, and my work right now is, I'm probably the person who required, or at least requires a broader definition of GIS. I tend to use geospatial information, use geospatial data, but primarily at the command line. So by doing programming, so interfacing with GDAL, which is the Geospatial Data Abstraction Library, through commands either through the shell of my computer or through Python or through other programming languages. That's usually the techniques that I use to make my work reproducible or scale to extremely large data sets. And in general, I'm interested in things like post-storm impacts, post-hurricane impacts along the coastline, especially here in North Carolina, or looking at social media trails, exhaust from people talking about what has occurred during post-storm impacts, and also just generally understanding the coastal landscape and how it changes. So those are the sort of set of scientific questions that I answer, sort of the suite of things that I'm interested in and that smell good to me. And that a lot of the times it's using geospatial information, but processed through this, in ways that are performant and can be computationally intense. So that's all I really had prepared. I didn't create any slides or anything like that, but that's sort of the background of what I'm interested in and what I'm doing.
Thank you. And that is perfectly all right. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Will.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm teaching two GIS classes at GIS department, Introduction to GIS, and a seminar in GIS as well. So for my class, focus on the GIS modeling work, including the physical geography and human geography, like hydrological modeling, social sensing, big data, all the hot topics in GIS modeling. So for my research, majorly two parts. One is the land use, land change modeling, or urban growth modeling. Another part is urban beauty and use modeling. So I'm in my study area in both China and the US. So look at here, this is one study area in China. So it's a very special place. So 50 years ago, nothing over there, and people go there and all use. So they started moving to there and work there. But then, there are a lot of big impact for the surrounding environment. So I'm doing the simulation work to see the, on the different scenarios, how about land use and coverage in the future. And I also do the urban growth modeling using C model, but we know there are a lot of software available for C modeling. But, this is from my class, we definitely can use the model builder in ArcGIS to do the C modeling as well. So at the very beginning, for this research. And another part is the building energy use consumption modeling. So I'm very interested in, this is the work I finished for Des Moines. So I'm working on another project for the New York City. So I'm very interested in the building energy consumption at hourly scale, and if it's high spatial resolution, every building over 200,000, I think for Des Moines, and then for New York City, even more. And also interesting, how about building energy consumption in the future under the background of climate change, climate warming, and how about we, adopt some energy saving policies and to, save energy, improve energy use efficiency. So I'm using GIS technique for the, finally for the visualization purpose to create this 3D map and also the dynamic map. Okay, so I think that's all about my teaching and research in GIS. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Joe, for organizing this panel and for inviting us. So I am a physical geographer. Specifically, I'm a hydrologist and fluviogeomorphologist, so I study river systems and water resources. And along with other tools like fieldwork, modeling, and remote sensing, GIS is one of the tools that I use to do my research. So a lot of what my work focuses on currently is interactions between abiotic and biotic components of river ecosystems. And, you know, especially how changes in the biotic environment, like ecological disturbance, succession, or long-term environmental change, can impact the physical environment through water and sediment fluxes. So one example of a project that I'm working on that's within that kind of broad area, which is kind of the most GIS-y project that I'm working on currently, is concerned with post-wildfire debris flows. So debris flows are these fast-moving torrents of saturated sediment that travel, you know, rapidly down stream channels in mountainous regions. They are extremely thick and viscous flows, which allows them to transport lots of debris, so giant boulders, trees, cars, houses, basically whatever gets in their path, which makes them extremely hazardous. So we know that the frequency of debris flows increases for several years following a wildfire for kind of a host of reasons. So partly because the lack of vegetation means there's more runoff and more rapid runoff, and also because there's fewer trees available to stabilize the soil with root systems. So because of this enhanced risk of debris flows following a wildfire, the U.S. Geological Survey does a hazard assessment following major wildfires in the U.S. To assess basically the likelihood that a debris flow will occur. And so this is just looking at the kind of hazard likelihood, but what this assessment does not include is any information on the debris flow runout. So what is the actual length of the debris flow and the path that it will take, which is important for determining which areas in terms of like specific locations and structures may be endangered by debris flows following a wildfire. So we are mapping debris flow runout for over 200 wildfires across 7 states in the US. So this is a big project that we can't do with fieldwork. You know, we can't go to that many watersheds to measure these properties in the field. So that's where GIS comes in. So we're using existing geospatial data sets like the National Elevation Data Set and the National Hydrography Data Set to apply this empirical model of debris flow runout called the average channel slope model, so that we can estimate debris flow runout just using GIS and available geospatial data sets. So the basics of how that works is, you know, what's really challenging with modeling debris flow runout is knowing what the initiation point is, so where the debris flow actually starts. So based on this empirical model, we define that initiation point as half of the vertical distance between the drainage divide and the fan head point, which is the point at which debris flow deposition begins. That's defined by the place where the channel opens up into an unconfined valley. And then we can define a slope between the initiation point and the fan head point that is a function of that elevation difference. And so we call it the beta slope. And then we define the length of debris flow runout as being the distance between the fan head point and the point where that beta slope intersects the actual topographic slope. So this is an example of the kind of like, you know, scientific research questions that I address using GIS. So looking at debris flow hazards. And this is an example of a project that would not be possible to do, without GIS and all of these great, like, kind of national scale geospatial data sets that we can take advantage of here in the US. So my research assistant on this project is my PhD student, Raj Sigdel, who's one of the other panelists. So he created the maps and is in the process of creating code that kind of automates this process. We will share the results of our debris flow mapping in an interactive web map, and also make the code available so that anyone who wants to do this for any watershed can do so.
All righty, thank you, Sarah. I know I saw that, map by Rajesh. I was like, ooh. All righty, Brian, would you be willing to introduce, your work with GIS and what you do with it?
Sure. I guess I can share a piece of my screen now. So right now I'm working on a project through the National Park Service and Network to Freedom that captures and highlights the lives of freedom seekers from North Carolina. UNCG is a digital partner of the Network to Freedom, and they actually have, obviously, the digital copies of the slave notices. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do is find a better way, I won't say better way, a more casual way to really kind of explore the notices for those who are not keen on this history, kind of creating a sandbox for people to kind of just, find their way around it. So in doing so, I was able to create this point map that shows a little bit of density of the different slave notices and their location. Let's see, this should work. So these are some of the features that it houses in terms of the data that's involved in the slave notices, in terms of age, gender. Freedom priority is something that I created because oftentimes we think of freedom seekers. Oftentimes when we think about freedom seekers, we're usually thinking about free territory. Truth is, the freedom priority range from going to free territory as well as seeking family. And so we have to kind of make sense of that. So freedom priority is probably one of the better ways that I could think of to kind of capture that. So again, this just allows us to think about the data differently, particularly those in North Carolina who may have more of an affinity for the local. They can maybe start to think about slavery in North Carolina from a very local aspect. And so this map helps us to do that and gives the data just a different feel and a different access point. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my first time seeing the result of that. That's awesome. All righty, and then next we have Rajesh. Oop, and you are muted.
I didn't realize that I was muted. So I'm a PhD candidate at the Department of Geography, Environment and Sustainability at UNCG. So GIS is basically a tool for me that I use in my research for my PhD dissertation. I use GIS to analyze both especially spatial data and also visualize it. And sometimes I use GIS, especially ArcGIS product, to share my results through various dashboards. So how did I start with GIS? I took a class in undergrad when I was an exchange student to Grand Valley State University from Nepal. And then I was fascinated by GIS. So I started learning GIS by me alone, self-taught. And also I took more classes as well. And I refined my GIS skills by working on different projects. Also, I think I already repeated this. I watched several Esri videos to refine my skills. My current project, I'm working at North Buffalo Creek. I'm understanding the dynamics of large wood in North Buffalo Creek, and I use GIS, especially for my transportation model. What is the minimum velocity needed to move the wood log, and I'm tagging the wood log by repeated survey, and then checking the length of the moved woods using GIS. I especially use ArcGIS software, although there are several softwares that GIS can be done. Open source software like QGIS, or even coding languages like Python or R, we can do GIS, but I mostly use ArcGIS Esri product. Within the ArcGIS or Esri product, spatial analyst tools are my favorite tool sets. But if the GIS, if the data has the geographic attribute, but it's a non-spatial data, what I mean is I can aggregate the data even if it has a geographic attribute, but I can use a non-spatial tool, then I prefer, if it's a simple aggregation, then I use R, or I even use other tools such as Power BI or even Tableau to visualize and analyze the data if it is mostly like non-spatial data, but even has a geographic attribute. So advices to newcomers or undergrad or even master's student. The first thing I took as I was introduced to GIS by taking a class. So classes are really helpful if you are an undergraduate student. And working on different projects would definitely help you refine your skills. I watched many Esri training videos, and there are lots of books available online that you can read. I think UNCG has also a partnership with O'Reilly that you can get videos and books for free online that you can definitely watch and read. One of the things to understand is it is important to master the theory rather than tools. So if you master the GIS theory, then specific tools, then it helps you switch between the different tools short amount of time. It's better to identify or select one tool and then learn GIS using that tool. And it makes learning easy. I think that's all, and I'm open to questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will definitely come back to those devices and pick your brain a little bit more about theory versus tools when we get into the Q&A session.
Sounds good. Jo, could you please also stop my sharing slide? I don't see a button in my, thank you.
Yep. Got you. All right, perfect. Mike. Oh no.
Unmute myself. There we go. There we go. Are you seeing my screen? Probably not. That's okay. I'll share mine. Sorry. From here. So, all right. Bring up my PowerPoint here and start the show. Okay. My primary role here on campus is to act as a manager of the geospatial data on campus. This is pretty much everything you see above and even below ground. Well, everything that's cultural, I guess you could say, for the most part. This can include utilities, things that keep us warm and cool, provides water and sewage services to us. So that's my primary function. Secondary is providing a sort of a library of layers to other units on campus that may need a map. For instance, Office of Disability Services, parking services, emergency management, and environmental health and safety. I even provide the building footprints for the UNCG mobile app for their mapping application to help you get around campus. So the idea is that all of these units basically use the same layers. So I manage those layers and sort of keep them safe in one area so that we can all access them. This reduces a lot of duplication of effort and so it keeps the data consistent across campus, across the entire organization. This is important. When I started here, virtually every group on campus had their own version of the map, campus map. sort of roll back here a little bit. About 20 years ago, when I was a graduate student here, I made the first interactive campus map. It was very crude. It was written as a Java applet, and but it sort of opened my eyes to sort of map communication, getting information out there to people. Over the course of time, I sort of improved, and I kind of circled back and ended up sort of doing it again. So one of my first sort of projects on campus was the One Campus, One Map initiative. And this was the idea of this was just to bring together all the information we have on campus and make sure all the building footprints are identical, make sure all the names are consistent across campus, locations such as parks, sports fields have consistent names across campus, and then provide this as a in a format that other people on campus can grab and make their own maps from. So this acts as a base map. This also acts as a foundation for the GIS, right? So this map is actually it's saved as a PDF. It can be edited in Adobe Illustrator, and you can grab it right now if you wanted to. Right? So let's see here. So this One Campus, One Map, the idea again is just make sure everybody was using the same information. We had maps. I found maps that had building names that were completely wrong. In some cases, buildings represented that no longer existed, and people just grab these off, through a Google image search or something, and just put them into their own projects. So this opened the door to another project, the Campus Kiosk Map, and this you may have seen at the end of College Avenue, Sterling, and up on Market Street, the entrance campus on Market. This was this was an effort to provide an up-to-date map of campus. The other one had been there for about 5 years, and it was showing some age, physically and content-wise. There were things that were missing. So again, this map as well is available as a PDF. You can download it right now from the same location. And if you need to, make edits to it within Adobe Illustrator, make it your own, zoom in on something, flip something out, do what you need to with it. So aside from my cartographic projects, which I absolutely love, one of my big roles here is to manage the data on campus for facility design and construction. This here is a project management dashboard, which I produced for, this one is the public-facing version of the dashboard, so that users, on campus, off campus, can see what's going on. Where are your tax dollars being spent? Where are your tuition dollars being spent on campus, as far as renovations and new construction projects? And here you can see a whole view of campus, little dots representing different types of projects across campus. There's information window over here to the right, lower right, and information on budget and number of projects that are going on either campus-wide or individual locations such as buildings. So I also work with facility operations. And facility operations, those are the people that keep you, again, warm, cool, safe, provide sanitary sewer and so forth on campus. Also plow the snow and keep the grounds looking nice. So effectively, every decision maker on campus, well, within facilities, all the way down to the crews that work across campus, have access to these maps. So if they're looking for an area, for instance, they're getting ready to plant a tree, they can find out what kind of utilities are passing through this area. They will call 811, which will go out and mark the facility for other facility owners, and then they will carefully plot out where they should put the tree using that information. Information is also useful for finding utilities that may cross each other. Sometimes this may have unfortunate results. There was a situation where on another campus where you had a steam line running across, running very close to an electrical line, and steam burst and it damaged the electrical line. These things were put in at different times over the years, and there was no real record of what was put in when at the time. Moves into something else. Another reason for this, is the existence of this data set, is institutional knowledge. over time, people end up retiring or moving on through some other way, and they tend to take this institutional knowledge with them. I remember asking somebody for, I believe it was emergency phone locations or lighting locations, and I was told, well, so-and-so handled this, but they've retired, and had no clue where to find the information because nobody else held it. Thankfully, we had some rudimentary maps, some GIS data. I was able to build off of that and sort of help rebuild the data. And pushing all this into ArcGIS Online allows us to sort of keep everything consistent and in one safe location where they can all access it. Let's see. Actually, I did bring up the database. This is the project database. I was very happy to hear that Jo Klein was using this. Very interested in what was going on at the library. So I can click here on the map and bring up a little. This is the building itself. That's more in comments. The library. So there's the library itself. We don't have a project going on there yet, but you can see some information about the building. A little photograph here. But if you click on a project, this project here is non-capital. It's been closed. Add exterior door and window to the wall of the maple room, etc. There's another one under there as well. Oh, I'm sorry, that's just the building itself. So users get a bunch of useful information if they're interested in knowing what's going on campus. One of the things that actually sparked this was a research company was interested in, wanted us to provide all of this data to them. And that required us spending hours going through our records, pulling information out and distributing it in a spreadsheet or a series of PDFs. I immediately set upon building this dashboard here just for that. My boss loved it so much, I built a more expanded version for him with lots of pie charts and bar charts everywhere. This has gotten a lot of good feedback from people. You can also see up here, if you just want to know projects that are in design, I can click on that, and all the little circles here represent projects that are in design. Projects that are in construction. So anything that's in construction now is in these little squares. They're color coded by whether they're capital or non-capital. Capital being anything over $300,000, and non-capital being under, of course. And also have campus-wide projects. Right now, the only thing we have going on campus-wide is the South Josephine Boyd Street roadway sidewalk improvements, which is not actually a UNCG project, but it's so close to campus, we want to. We've got a liaison working with the city on that. So,
I was going to say real quick, I'll jump in.
That's pretty much it, Jo.
Yeah, I was going to say I definitely use this as I'm waiting for the day the library renovation project is added to this map.
You will see a little dot pop up in the library when that happens. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and beat me to it.
Got it.
Cool.
I got it. Yep.
All righty. So thank you all for your amazing introductions. It's really cool to hear about the projects that you're working on and the kind of stuff that you do. So there's a lot of different types of projects that folks are working with on GIS, which is why I wanted to do this panel in the first place. All right. So I know we have one attendee. Thank you so much, Melody. The rest of you will be, I guess, watching the recording if you are watching this. So I have some questions for y'all. So I'll go ahead into the Q&A portion. Melody or other participants, if they join us, if you have any questions, feel free to use the hand raise function or to just type it directly into the chat. But I'll go ahead and start with my questions. And then folks who are watching the recording, if you have questions, you are welcome to email me at ejklein, spelled how it is up there, or here at uncg.edu. And I will pass your questions along. So the very first question, some of you have already kind of answered it, but if you have any elaborations on it, I'd love to hear. What is GIS to you? And I guess whoever wants to start can. I see nodding. Sarah, did you have a?
I'm a nodder, like I just nod along to things, but yeah, I can go first. Yeah, so I guess like to kind of just like break it down. Okay, so geographic means that it's about, spatial data. Information kind of gets at the information part. And then like the systems or science, I really like the distinction you made at the beginning where it's like, okay, the systems are the kind of like, software, whatever the specific analysis tools that you're using, which could be something like ArcGIS or some sort of open source thing like Evan uses. So like, whatever the system may be. But then like there's also like the science that goes into spatial analysis, and that is a really important component of GIS. So yeah, I think having a sort of broad definition of it, where it's not just about a particular type of software program, but it's really about this method of analysis, I think is a really important distinction. And I think that kind of gets to what Raj was talking about too, with the distinction between the theory and the tools. So like the tools are not the point, the tools are just there to help us advance our theory, so our understanding of basically why things are where they are and the spatial interactions among different, human or physical phenomena.
Thank you.
I think Sarah and Raj already give us a very perfect answer for this question. Yeah, Sarah mentioned more about the theoretical part, what is GIS, right? And Raj mentioned, okay, the tools. So we're using the GIS for processing the data, analyzing the data, and visualizing the data. And also from my understanding, the GIS, because when I was an undergraduate student majoring in geography, I was supposed to be a geography high school teacher. So, but but I thought, I hope I can be connected with more advanced technique. So later I realized, oh, GIS is the best choice. So geography, make the connection with information science and also computer science. Like Evan did a lot of programming work, right? So yeah, so that I think that's my understanding for GIS. Yeah, I feel I'm very lucky. I choose GIS, GIS chose me. So it did change my life, gave me the chance to study here and work here. I do like it, and also I like working with you guys together in any GIS project. Yeah.
I say GIS librarianship chose me, kind of an adjacent.
I like both of those answers. They're actually resonate very well with me. Over the last 20 years, I generally spent time in GIS providing information to the public or policymakers through working with NGOs or USAID stuff, World Bank, just creating maps and doing some analysis. In large part, helping scientists sort of visualize some information to get it out there to the public. So GIS for me rotates largely around communication. In large part, again, getting stuff out to the public, the people who end up funding a lot of the research that's out there, and even though they may not know it, getting them to understand the value of the stuff that you all are working on and others are working on, but also adding a sense of place to it as well. So the maps and other visuals, provide a meaningful sort of bite-sized chunks of information. And I think, especially today, science communication is extremely important. Extremely important. Some people don't understand what goes into it. A lot of science journalists have problems trying to communicate the information themselves. Sometimes scientists themselves have difficulty talking to the public. We're so used to talking to each other that sometimes it's hard to get the information out there to others who may be funding or making decisions on that as well. So that's sort of where GIS sort of my feelings on what GIS is to me, I guess.
I feel much the same way about data visualization as well, charts and graphs, and knowing how to communicate that. It's very important. Any other takers for this first one?
It's gonna be a little different for me. Again, I was trained as an American historian, so GIS is more of a tool that we utilize to kind of help understand human geography. It was once said a long time ago that the eyes of history are chronology and geography. So we usually look at geography to kind of help us to understand context, movement, and relationship. So it is luckily, of late, it's been a very much a phenomenal tool that I'm able to kind of use and explore in different ways. And not to be prolong it, but I guess this as an example of this movement in terms of freedom seekers, students are able to use this map, story maps, for instance, to kind of capture location and movement of certain narratives that we have. And it just gives us a greater opportunity to present history, which is not usually preferred topic of exploring, to provide the public with something that is a lot more digestible and attractive. So things like story maps and other GIS tools has helped us to attract the public to some of the things that we do.
I love that. A lot more of, adjacent to science communication, but you're communicating a different kind of science. You're communicating the people and the stories of the people behind the science. And then we have a comment in the chat of, I love the way GIS can give voice to narratives often marginalized. Yeah, and it is a great tool for doing so. I think any other folks who want to do that one, I can also move on to the next question. No, you don't have to respond to every question. All right, cool. So I'm going to move on to the next one. You also may have already covered this question too in some of your introductions, but how did you get started with GIS? What is, the beginning of your path to where you are now working with it? I'm definitely interested, Will, if you'd be willing to take this question. I'm interested in how, you mentioned a little bit about how you were going to do geography teaching, and I'd love to hear how GIS came to you instead.
Sure, yes. Actually, in addition to take GIS classes when I was like an undergraduate student, because GIS classes, is required for a geography major in China. So, but just finish the assignment and get done the work, that's it. But later I was selected to work for a national land cover survey in China. It's funded by Chinese government. So my friends, my classmates and I, we got the training and we're using the GIS software to work on this project. Actually, we are not using the ArcGIS, we're using the Chinese version GIS, MapGIS, because there are some like security concern there. So they're using the Chinese version GIS software. And we're also going outside to do some field work. Then I feel, oh, this is something different for taking other geography classes, because for geography classes, mostly they're like a theoretical part, right? You have to memorize something, and especially at the very beginning. But later you can do some research, go outside for the field work. But for GIS, at the very beginning, you are going to sit there in the lab to learn some skills using the software and the computer. You feel that's very cool. So at that moment, I feel, okay, I should choose GIS as my concentration, and later to, when I was a graduate student, just focus on the research in GIS. Yeah. So I think that's how did I get started with GIS. Yeah.
That's awesome. So kind of that like tools, very hands-on work. I also really enjoy hands-on tool focused type work too.
I guess I'll join. Like GIS. Well, it really is kind of, for me, started in undergrad, kind of trying to figure out the pulse of different projects. I come from a very old school, traditional way of kind of doing history. So me being kind of new and trying to push things forward, I wanted to see, what technologies were out there and how can I apply newer technologies to qualitative data, which is a very hard thing to do. which particularly we're not doing anything like social history or economic history, that is very hard to do. So using GIS, helped me to kind of explore history in a different way. And so it was an undergrad where I was kind of introduced to the benefits of GIS and what I may be able to do in the future with it through the lens of history. And it was encouraged to. I shout out to Dr. Cook. He really helped me with that.
Yeah, having a person to kind of push you into it definitely helps. I guess so, Brian, you mentioned qualitative data and working with that. I know, Evan, I'm going to put you on the spot if you are willing to answer. I know you work, especially when you're looking at kind of the social media responses to storms. I know some folks might consider those to be qualitative type data at some point. So I'd be curious to see how you got both into, how did you get started with GIS in general, but also specifically, looking at social media data to be a part of your data set.
I started to use GIS, I guess, when I was an undergraduate, like most people, and then moved to a place that didn't have a site license. So for these proprietary tools, so needed to learn how to do a lot of these things without the tens of thousands of dollars behind me to buy the software. So I sort of didn't realize that the underlying infrastructure is all of ArcGIS, as I understand it, is all totally free. It's built on top of a gigantic free library. So we started to interact more and more with that. So that's sort of how I started, and also transitioned away from using what most people think of as the traditional GIS tools. And in terms of using the quality, I think I got interested primarily, I'm pretty interested in just understanding non-traditional ways of knowing. So, I mean, I'm trained as a scientist. I'm trained to like go out with a ruler and measure stuff on the ground, like measure the height of something, measure the width of something. But I come from a family of people who are very interested in qualitative data and are all social scientists. So I'm just very interested in alternate ways of knowing. And one of those is understanding what people are talking about and trying to code that information and hear about qualitative ways in which people are describing their own lived experiences. So I think that got me very interested in looking at the stream of information that comes from people and their lived experiences. So that's social media. And I think I'm very interested in storm impacts because, when storms hit, you see news about certain places, but not about other places for a variety of structural reasons, not because one place was hit more than another, but just because one places the news crew can get to, or has a hotel nearby or a Waffle House nearby for the news crew to camp out at. So that got me very interested in just trying to collate what people are actually saying and to try to understand more from the standpoint of people on the ground. This is a really interesting data source for unpacking the lived experiences of people.
Thank you. All right, do I have any other takers for this question? How did you get started with GIS?
I'll shoot. In short, accidentally. I actually come from archaeology originally as my undergraduate. To be honest, if I'd taken one geography class when I was an undergrad, things would have been a lot different. So I did archaeology for about 8 years or so, and I started doing surveying. And because I hauled this huge computer around with me, they started letting me do the topographic maps in my hotel room, and I went from there. Started using a business GIS. I think it was called Map Info, which is very old. This is ancient history, no pun intended. But and it was very rudimentary as far as what I needed. But largely, I just made maps with it. That's all they wanted. I started thinking, gosh, it should be neat to be able to do predictive studies. Could we predict where certain types of pre-European contact sites are located using landform geography and proximity to water and so forth. Never get a chance to do that at the time. Turns out it is possible. It's not 100%. It's not super accurate, but it's like any science. It's really very useful. So at the time, I decided, well, if I'm going to continue on pursuing GIS, I should go to school for this. So I ended up attending UNCG. I guess you could say I needed some direction in my life, so I moved from anthropology to geography. From there, I ended up working for a variety of different companies. Well, one company for about 10 years. And in that time, I just kept pursuing the tools. We had some in-house tools, largely. They introduced me to ArcGIS. Well, I introduced to it in graduate school, but I had access to even more tools through the company. And from there, ended up doing freelance work. And it's interesting about Evan, your experience not having the thousands of dollars when I moved on from that job. I ended up exploring QGIS a lot. It is a fantastic tool. Does a lot of very useful things. Sometimes it does things better than more popular GIS tools. So that really sort of saved me right there. And then I moved right in here into UNCG again, working in facilities. So I've kind of touched a little bit of different types of GIS across the last 20 years, doing a lot of different things. And it was all just because of I've learned how to do some very basic surveying in the field, and I carried a computer with me. It was very accidental that I started into this. That's basically it.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna move on to the next one. I especially, Raj, would love to hear your answer to this because you kind of covered it a little bit in your introduction. How did you or do you learn GIS? So you had a couple of resources that I thought were great.
I mostly took classes in my master's degree program. I took one undergrad class when I was an exchange student, and I had to return back to Nepal after my program ended. But I came back to USA from a master's program, so I took many classes. But even back in Nepal, after I took a class in USA, I started learning GIS on my own. Nowadays, it's very easy to learn anything, I guess. Like, there are like so many free videos and tutorials online that you can access to. And UNCG library has fantastic resources. And I think it's partnered with O'Reilly. Please correct me, Joe, if I'm wrong, but I don't know, it's a partnership or something like, you can get like videos and PDF copies, books for free that you don't have to pay if you are a student. So, that's how I'm even learning these days. I go to O'Reilly websites and use the PDF copies and videos and just watch it. There are, thousands of hours of lectures available there. That's how I learned it, and I'm still learning.
Thank you. Yeah, and O'Reilly, yeah, it's one of our library databases. So we subscribe or get resources from O'Reilly, formerly Safari Books. So they have a lot of good GIS learning tutorials and resources. That's a good one. Anybody else?
Well, to kind of combine the previous question with this one, so like most people, I started learning GIS as an undergrad when I just took a GIS class, but I wouldn't say that I really learned GIS from that class. Like I learned button pushing, so I don't feel like I actually really learned GIS until I was a master's student and I had a project that I was doing that required the use of GIS. So I think this is true, I think, of a lot of kind of skills. Like you kind of need a context in which to apply them. You can't just learn about these things in the abstract. You have to actually do it. So I think that's kind of how you learn GIS is just by doing GIS. And like Raj said, there's whatever thing it is that you want to do, someone has done it. and has posted like a video or a tutorial on how to do it. So really it's just a matter of like, identifying a goal and then saying like, okay, what are the resources I need that can help me accomplish this thing that I don't know how to do? And then you know how to do that thing, and then you can move on to the next thing. So I think like with most skills, it's just kind of like applying it and practicing it.
I totally agree with Sarah. Yeah. So I believe most of us are using ArcGIS very frequently, right? Even, in China, I mentioned I was using the Map.js, Chinese version GIS, but actually, that's just for the project. Most people, mostly for other projects, we're just using ArcGIS. So people throughout the whole world, they're using the ArcGIS, and all the materials online, videos, discussion board, even if sometimes you're having any question, you just Google it, then you can find it directly. So it's not very hard to get the material. But I think, no matter you're taking a class, you're searching online, you just get answer directly. But later when you're moving to like a project to take an internship, you have to answer the question by yourself. So I think, at the very beginning, take the classes. That's very important. You got the basic skills. But for the next stage, you should be involved in like some projects, take some internship. So, give yourself a chance to get some practical training for using GIS. Yeah.
That's a great point of, what's the next step after learning how to Google and learning how to find the thing? How do you actually learn how to do the thing without having to use a reference? And there are a lot of things in libraries where we talk about learning styles and how some people will translate up into different skill levels, I guess, for lack of a better word. So it's what makes you a little bit past a beginner or basic into kind of intermediate or even professional skills with GIS. Thank you. Any other takers? Alrighty. All right, so the next one is going to be, do you have a favorite GIS tool? So we've talked about a number of them. I know QGIS is one of my favorites, but what are yours? And I guess we can be more specific too. So instead of just ArcGIS, what specific tool within ArcGIS do you like to work with? Or which one?
Well, yeah, I got to give a shout out to the hydrology tools in ArcGIS because like as a hydrologist, whenever you're starting a project of basically whatever type, the first thing you have to do is like delineate a watershed. And this was before my time, but I guess before GIS, like this was like a kind of involved process that involved like, drawing on topo maps and things like that. But the fact that you can just like do that pretty much instantly in ArcGIS or like, I'm sure many other GIS software as well. That's like, that just makes it so much simpler. And then just having tool sets or data sets like the National Hydrography data set that have like all of these attributes, and it's like this system where you can easily like join attributes to particular like stream reaches or catchments, like having that all sort of be like seamless like at a national scale for the US is like really helpful. So I think, just I guess like as a tool, I would say as well is just like having like public, national scale seamless geospatial data, which we are very lucky to have in the US because a lot of other countries around the world do not have access to that kind of data.
What I have been learning is one particular tool might not be easy to use it for all different kind of projects. In my experience, even ArcGIS, which should be very helpful and easy to even geocode, it's slower in geocoding compared to Tableau, the basic geocoding. But when you are doing advanced cartographic or visualizing things, then ArcGIS wins over Tableau. So that's what I used to like ArcGIS a lot, but I'm slowly moving away from ArcGIS and venturing into different other products. So my experience is one tool does not answer all the questions, and one tool is not going to be the fastest tool in all different kinds of projects.
That is always how it works, is the one tool that actually meets your needs is the one that takes 12 years and a day to actually process.
I want to mention maybe not a specific to, we're talking about ArcGIS, but there are several software available there like ArcMap, ArcToolbox, ArcCalc, ArcGlobe, and ArcStan. So I just want to talk about ArcStan because, I think that's very good for, visualization purpose. So for example, I can share my screen again to show you. Because for ArcMap, we definitely can create a beautiful map. It's just for 2D, right? But sometimes, like Sarah mentioned, her hydrology work in the watershed of its different elevation. It's very good. Use ArcStan because you have the elevation data. You can create like a 3D map, okay? And also, no matter the physical geographer, human geographer, we're not just doing the research for a specific date or time. Usually we have like a time series data, a product want to show, right, finally. So for ArcStan, you can also create such kind of, the dynamic map. This is like 24 hours, beauty and consumption. So I think it's also very easy to get the tutorial from the website from any video or something like that, to create such kind of dynamic map. So I think that's very good for the visualization purpose. So I like it very much for using the ArcStan, yeah.
My favorite tool for GIS is Google and Stack Overflow, where I look for every single answer to every question because I can't remember anything.
That's a good one. Yep. I remember learning about Stack Overflow in grad school, or actually in undergrad. Yep. It's a forum where a lot of people will post questions on how to do a thing, and someone else will respond how to do the thing in a bunch of different ways, if you're lucky. I always hate it when it's something that is from 2007 and it hasn't been answered yet, though, and it's the only thing that shows up on Google when you Google for your question. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question, which is, do you have any advice for people looking to get started with GIS? I know that's a very broad question.
I'd recommend taking a class from the Geography, Sustainability, Environment and Sustainability here at UNCG. Personally, well, as Sarah pointed out earlier, you sort of learn button pushing to begin with, but as you develop a mind for it and you start focusing on your interests, and you realize that most of your data out there has a place, has a location, you can start expanding that and actually start doing some hands-on work with data that means something to you, rather than just stuff that's canned out of a book. The canned data is great. I mean, it gets you started. It gets your feet wet. Sarah, hydrology, feet wet. Anyway, sorry, I'm so sorry. Aside from that, there's lots of MOOCs, massive open online courses out there. It's already been mentioned, YouTube is a great resource for learning things. Google in general, just looking stuff up. And typically, even today, I will hit up Google for something. My supervisor will say, "Hey, can we do this?" I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know." I mean, I told my students, I actually taught GIS back in 2006 here, and I told my students, "You will probably only use 10% of this software ever, and then the project will change, and you'll have to learn something else." I mean, and that happens to me all the time. So just be flexible and learn different tools too. QGIS. I actually dabbled in SQL Spatial a bit, the previous employer. Google has great mapping capabilities as well, especially if you're just trying to get data into a map. And I'll tell you, dashboards has been one of my favorite tools, especially getting information out there to people and letting them interact with it and actually manipulate data or answer their own questions from it. So learning how to learning how to use those tools as well is extremely useful. So you're not just doing all the work yourself, I guess you could say. You get somebody else to do it. Do it for themselves. So yeah, there's a lot of great advice out there. So, but that's what I've got. So.
I guess coming from over non-expert opinion, I usually encourage play, frustration, confusion, and allow those things to kind of work themselves out. Particularly for those who are in more kind of social sciences, that really doesn't always bode well for GIS projects, is to really just kind of think about it, always consider it. Because I think GIS is quite interdisciplinary and it has a lot of uses. And so just kind of stretching the imagination as you're kind of thinking about the data set that you're working with. I think that is important, and allow fresh thoughts to flow. One thing I was trying to do with the project I'm working on now was this very massive map. And interactive map, but I didn't know how massive it was. It's just, I saw it, I said, hey, I want it to look like that, but not knowing what it took. I guess I can kind of get shy, show you guys what I was looking to do. So this is the shipping map that I said, oh, I want to do something like this, but not knowing, what it would take to do something like this and how many people it would take to do something like this. And so it helped me to kind of scale down even my own expectations in terms of what projects I can do within the scope of my resources. So I think, but I think it's pushing it, and just allowing the process to take place. That would be my advice.
I think probably my answer for this question is, it's depending on what do you want to do with GIS. Because for example, for my introduction to GIS class, I have 90% of students outside of geography. So they are from biology, civil engineering, anthropology, archaeology. So people are from everywhere, they're using GIS. Probably they just want to use GIS to finish an assignment, a project, so they can take the class, get the training, that's enough, right? And if you're a major in geography, GIS concentration, you have two choices as well. First, but no matter which option you take, GIS started with geography, so you have to take some geography classes first, then move to the GIS part. But there you have two options. First one is like most of us, we're doing the application part, we're using ArcGIS, we're using GIS technique. So we just need to get more training to improve our GIS skills, get more chance to be involved in some projects, internship, to improve ourselves. But some other people, they're interested in secondary development. I have a friend, she got her Ph.D. in geography, but she works for Esri. So she developed a lot of software in GIS. So for this kind of people, I think just take classes from geography is not enough. They should get some training, take some classes from computer science part, learn how to use Python, maybe Vish, I don't know, other programming skills, maybe like V#, right? I'm not a programming person, so I'm not very familiar with that. But I think if they're interested in this part, they definitely have to take some classes from computer science. Yeah.
I agree with Dr. Lee. GIS is such a big field, and it's really important to understand your niche, which you want a master's on or become expert on it, you can be a GIS, somebody who develop GIS software, or you want to be a user of GIS, or you want to disseminate your information to community members using story maps or dashboards. So whatever interest you within the GIS realm, it's really important to find out that first and then start mastering and learning about it.
Yeah, and as someone who is definitely like a user rather than a developer, I would still advise like, learn coding. So learn Python or some other language. So I learned as a grad student, I kind of wish I had started like earlier as an undergrad, because then I'd probably be better at it now. So I think even if you are just a user, just having some basic coding ability really increases what you can do. So yeah, like take a Python class or something, while you're just starting out. I definitely recommend that.
Sarah, I totally agree with you. I hope I learn how to use programming, the Python, some other programming skills earlier. Yeah, my advisor was telling me to learn it, but I refuse. But later I feel, okay, I should learn it earlier. Yeah, because very useful. Even we just use our GIS technique, right? We're not developing GIS software. It's still very useful because we're handling all the big data everywhere. Yeah.
All right, I think we have Evan. Did you want to talk about or?
I think it's just important to see something that you want to do. I mean, I think even as Brian shared the shipping map, I mean, I look at stuff like that and I'm like, I find things like that. And I'm like, oh, I'd like to make that map, but instead of like global shipping, I'd like it to be something else. And then just curiosity, and then failing a lot at being able to do it and realizing that you don't have the skills to do it. And then, moping around your house for a while and then trying to figure it out. I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for just picking one little thing that you'd like to see different in the world or see exist from your own hands. And I think then trying really hard to make it happen. I think that that's probably the best way that I have ever found for me personally to ever do anything. And I can't generalize that. Obviously, I'm a data point of N of one, sample of one, but that's how I've found it's been great to learn stuff.
Thank you. That is a very great, I think, note to end on. So thank you all so much for being panelists on this panel. We will send out the recording. I'll send out the recording to y'all to share. And I will post the recording somewhere at some point. So thank you again, and good luck with your GIS work in the rest of the semester. I guess happy Thanksgiving. That's next week.
Thanks, Jo.
Thanks, Jo.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.